Greetings, comrades, and welcome to the Eastern Border. And I want to start this episode with a PSA for all of you, because most of my listeners are American, and, well, you are way more religious people than we are here in Europe. In Europe, religion does not really play a part in our lives as much as it does in the United States. And now there's an outrage about the Paris Olympics opening. But for one, yes, it was controversial. However, it was not controversial in the way that you might think. For one, everyone was up in arms about Aya Murakami's performance there, which was what French people were crazy about, which missed everyone outside of France, I suppose. But I'll start with an important thing. This is a PSA so that you can tell your friends and maybe calm down a bit, because, it's not the Last Supper. First of all, what French are known about? They're known about their artsiness, controversies, baguettes, and, to be honest, being a stuck-up assholes sometimes. And they're very nationalistic, too. They have their French pride. A lot of them won't even speak English to you. So why would they use a fresco? Because that's a fresco, not a painting. You can't move the Last Supper. It's literally painted on a wall of a building there. So it's not that. This was the Feast of the Gods, painted in 1635 by Jan van Hermes, which is located in France, which is, accurate, because what is the original Olympics? A Bacchanalia, a feast of the gods. What is Bacchanalia? Well, Bacchus is the Roman name for Dionysus. This painting depicts the Olympian gods celebrating Thetis and Peleus' wedding, with Apollo crowned at the center of the table and Dionysus in the foreground. No Jesus was depicted ever, which makes sense because it's also a very famous painting currently located in the Louvre in France. So they did that, and they made it look controversial because, for one, if you know something about Dionysus, you would know that he would love controversy. French also love controversy. But now they even tweeted about this. This is supposed to be Dionysus who shows the absurdity of violence of men towards other men. We should have a party instead. That was the message here. Nothing to do, of course, it was modeled after the Last Supper, just the painting replaced it with Greek gods. But yeah, that's okay, because it's about Greek gods, and that's not a Smurf. No one knows who a Smurf here is at all, because we didn't watch Smurfs, but we know our classical paintings. It is literally Greek gods having a party, and that's Dionysus in the center, because Greek gods having a massive party is what the Olympics are. It is fitting the theme. It is because think about it. Why would the French depict a painting that is located in Italy when they are known to be very stuck up and very arrogant about their own national pride? And I'm not even a fan of them, but this is just silly. And they tweeted about this too. Official France Olympic Committee tweeted that this is Dionysus. Now, look, if someone tells they are doing horrible things, no, they're not. They're being controversial. They're being extremely French, yes, but not evil. And secondly, about the Pale Horse Rider. That is Seine, the river that flows through France, is depicted as a person going through there. That is the goddess of River Seine. Oh, and the cut-off head, that's Marie Antoinette. Also, the music was performed by a metal band that I love very much, and Evita also loves very much Gojira, and they're amazing, and all the metalheads were up in arms and super happy about this. So I hope that settles that part of it, because I've seen so much of this on the internet, and as a historian, and if you remember my dad, who sadly passed away last year, he taught me a lot about art history. So, yeah, I obviously recognized that it was Dionysus instantly, and everyone thinks the same, it was Jesus. And the fun fact is that in Latvia, we have two controversial artists, Alvis Hermanis and Zigmārs Liepiņš, guys who have made plenty of controversial art themselves, and they're complaining about this because they're misreading this too, and I feel kind of ashamed about that. But yeah, so I just wanted to put this in because yeah, this has nothing to do with that. This is to do with the Greek gods. And they made it look controversial because they're French. Case closed. So please just stop worrying about it. It was perfectly fitting the theme, because if it's about Dionysus, you can put all sorts of things there. The Bacchanalia, the celebration of the gods, is supposed to be over the top, controversial, with debauchery and everything. And that's what they did. And it's good. That fits in the Olympics, because if you Google up athletes having sex in the Olympics, you'll find out that that's like the second most important thing ever. In France, they even made the athletes' beds out of literally cardboard, tough cardboard, so that you wouldn't be able to have sex on them. That was controversial, because once again, in Europe, we don't care about sex. Nobody censors females' nipples at all, because as my relative said, there's only one way to make a man, but many ways to kill one. Why should we glorify all those ways if there's only a single way? Let's glorify the way how you make more men. Ta-da. Again, cultural differences. So please, everyone who feels offended about this, don't. It's an artsy French thing, but they're really depicting Greek themes. Sorry about taking about 6 minutes of your time about this stuff, but so much stuff is going on the internet, and we do not need other pointless nonsense. Just that, it would basically distract us from more important things, to which I'm about to get to. But before I'll do that, this I think is a great time to do a bit of a plug on my show. Please consider supporting our show. Also, I wanted to give you the special thanks, because about the glasses, the goggles, I wanted to give a special thanks to an anonymous person from Switzerland who really wished to remain anonymous. And I'll just say, please buy some Toblerone chocolates or eat a fondue, because I did not expect anyone to be this generous. Like, the person just instantly covered all my costs, covered with the goggles. It was amazing, and thank you so much. So that's done. And when they arrive and I'll start practicing with them, when I'll go to Ukraine next year, yeah, sure, the images are going to look like 80s television, but that's the only thing that's legal there. I hope you understand. I have been very open about this, because I can't bring my DJI setup there, because DJI just reports the positions of Ukrainians to Russians and the Russian positions to Ukrainians. So they're just, China delivers everything to everyone, and that, by the way, touches the other parts of the show. But thank you so much. You are truly the best. But about everything else, yeah, I know times are tough, but I also am trying to figure out how this married life works, because everything's about also everything's about to have some surgeries done, and which is pretty bad. And all I can say is PSA, get that vaccine for the human papillomavirus. It's very important. That's all I'll say about this. But yeah. So I'll get to Ukraine news. But if you want to support the show, then patreon.com/theeasternborder, or just go to theeasternborder.lv and click the donate button there, or you can go to the link which is posted on my website to buy some good merch, and everything which is on the brand of Club of Angry Patriots goes straight to Ukraine. So now that this is settled, and we're 8 minutes in, I'll get to actually today's Ukraine news. So yeah, now that we've dealt with a French attempt of trolling mostly American people who might not be informed about European art history, which is so French that, yeah, obviously they did that. I'm gonna go to some news here, and before anyone asks, because I've gotten this question a lot of times in email in response to my last episode, because some people were newer to the channel. Were asking, why am I focusing on the Z author news so much? Well, because for one, if I use Ukrainian sources, then people tell that I'm just reposting Ukrainian propaganda. And if I do it from a Western perspective, I don't trust Western media that much. So I really look at what the pro-war, pro-Putin guys write and what they report. And I use that so that there could be no doubts that I'm reporting things, because reporting things from that perspective, so that if they speak about problems in the army, they really have problems in the army because they want the Russian army to win. I'm using this because they are the most credible source about the actual situation on the ground, just so you understand. I do not support them in any way. I do not endorse them in any way. I make fun of them, yes, because I consider them evil and stupid, but my goal here is just so that you would have an ironclad proof of something that I say, so that you knew that when someone on that side of the conflict says something, then they mean it. It's not a lie. They are really complaining about the real situation in the front lines, so that you knew about this, because I had to also find my niche in this whole war situation, and mainstream media will pick up many stories about the whole ongoing events probably better than I do. But this is what I can provide, because I don't know of any other English source that does this. So I try to just give my input so that also, if you argue with someone who's on Putin's side about this, you can have like ironclad arguments, which these people simply cannot ignore. But there are sometimes important news, and we'll also get to Kartopolov's law. But for one, most important news that the author of the Z channel Gray Zone, not the American Gray Zone, the Russian Gray Zone that I use, one of the bigger channels, was killed in Mali. Nikita, call sign White Fedyanin, was one of the mercenaries of the PMC Wagner. Haha, guess what? Wagner group is back, baby. Who was killed in Mali. A total of 80 Wagnerites were killed in the ambush. Another 15 were captured. Of course, the first to react was Deshergar Rusic, the utter neo-Nazis. I made an episode about them earlier in the war. You should check that one out, where their leader talks about how he literally murdered kittens, literally, to practice killing Ukrainians, and what his awe was when he committed his first murder. Secondly, he also openly calls himself a Nazi. He literally has said that Russian television, they have no problems with it. So just saying what kind of people we're dealing with here. He writes, quote, "Our good friend, admin of the channel Gray Zone, call sign White, died in battle. He died honorably with a weapon in his hands as a warrior should. At the moment, according to my data, there are more than 80 people there as a result of this operation. More than 15 people are in captivity. This is what concerns our Russian comrades, servicemen who represent the interests of Russia," end quote. Осведомитель войны, or like overlooker of the war, writes, we communicated with Nikita long before the special military operation. Directly on the special operation, he went on his vacations as a volunteer. Went on combat outings with special forces when there were so many refuseniks that 3 people could go out to the task. Since the age of 22, through his channel, many times he helped the Russian military in equipping them with technical means. And of course, he was not afraid to raise sensitive topics, calling out their names and surnames. At the same time, Nikita said that he was much more interested in the movements in the Middle East. For the last 6 months, he had been working around Syria and African countries where our country has its own interests. So yeah, it is great that he's been finally, dispatched with, because he's apparently an important person. Colonel Kassad writes, in Mali, a significant number of Wagner fighters and soldiers of the armed forces of Mali were killed in an ambush by militants in the north of the country. The militants attacked under the cover of a sandstorm, achieving tactical surprise. Also, a significant number of government soldiers and several Wagner fighters were captured. Some have already been exchanged back. According to some reports, among the dead was the admin of Gray Zone channel. And he writes, I knew him personally. We met several times in Moscow. Among the captives was the well-known Lotus, but he has already been exchanged back. There are other comments. Portfolio of the General Staff writes, he, Gray Zone, worked in Syria and other countries, participated in intelligence on Kherson landings until 2022 and in Khrinki at the end of 2023, which to me puts him clearly on the shit list. Coming to work there on vacation, not for a salary. He was the ideological bastard, a true Nazi. So I simply cannot feel sorry for him. And his last deployment was dedicated to the PMC Wagner unit, liberating Africa from groups of separatists and militants of various stripes, also just promoting Putin's interests. Bastard. Last battle Nikita took near the town of Tinzutin in Mali, Fama units with the support of PMC Wagner were on their way to storm the above-mentioned settlement, but the plans were hindered by a sandstorm. It was decided to turn the convoy in the opposite direction, after which, under the cover of the sandstorm, militants of the Azawad movement and the local branch of the band Al-Qaeda attacked Fama units and the PMC Wagner from an ambush. Portfolio of the General Staff. And this Al-Qaeda attack is important because, for one, remember how they don't like to represent ISIS and how they're friendly with Taliban. Well, Taliban hates Al-Qaeda and Al-Qaeda hates ISIS and everyone hates each other there. So it's no surprise that this really happened. And again, this should really show you what kind of a person he was, because Rosic Adaman, the leader of the Rosic group, the fucking bastard who literally bragged about how he murdered cats and how he had touched the liver of a Ukrainian soldier before he squished it. Fucking hell, man. Sorry about that. He writes about him from the very Russian perspective. A man who was a true patriot of his country, who did not do little for it. He did a lot. He was not afraid to write about the mess that was going on in our army and in our country. And this is the thing. This is why I quote these people. this is why I quote these people, because these bastards are really, truly evil. And this is why I want to show that this fact is true, obviously, and how these people think, and what you can use, because these are not some sort of Ukrainians. These are literal neo-Nazis, scum of the earth, that do this. But in other news, of course, the Kartopolov's law about the gadgets is still being active. The military informant channel illustrates the claim about the importance of gadgets for the Russian army. Z Community, by the way, still is writing about this, because that's the biggest thing they've been writing for. I have about 47 pages selected about their quotes, and I'm really thankful that, I have coded a thing that just gets me all these channels, so now I can look at this one coded. I can just look at one Telegram channel where I get all the news about this subject instantly, instead of going through insane amounts of them. And yeah, this is why coding is good, because it really helps me. And I have to say that AI technologies, this is the right way of using them, I think, because it really makes me able to make more episodes per month, because then I spend less time just reading about all this stuff, and I can just do this, and then I can just give it to you, which is nice. So they really hope that Kartopolov's law will not be signed by President Putin, which is definitely going to be signed, because Putin is obviously not informed. And he writes the following, which should explain this stuff. Quote, "This is what the command center of the UAV operators of the group leading the offensive at Chasiv Yar looks like. All communication is based, among other things, on the use of purely civilian gadgets, online broadcasts of the situation from drones and voice chats over the internet in Discord." Someone should inform Discord about this. I wish we could confiscate all their gadgets and put them in the brig for 10 days each. The author of the Volunteer Z channel, Frontline Garage, sadly, I am so sad with him as well, complains about the wrong people. How Russians are just a terrible nation by themselves. He just wants to basically hide behind their backs, I suppose. Lives, behind the wall of his prosperous life, and doesn't even think about the feats of brave people and honorable people, how Russian people just don't care, which is an important subject to me, as I literally just recently wrote an article about this one. Quote, "You saw it yourself, some invisible watershed, a glass wall added to the glass ceiling. And this wall has on one side an existential battle of brave, honorable people who die for their country, and something bigger, more significant than the concept of self. And the other side is absolutely well-fed prosperity, which, they should care about, because that's just normal, but not like these Z idiots can comprehend these things. And this wall of the prosperous side is a little tinted, so that the sun and unpleasant things do not hit your eyes. This well-fed person, a little exuding well-being, is the holder of this very glass. It is thanks to this holder that there is an illusion that you should not hurry to help, you should weigh in. And this decision can last for months. Can last for months. We know what we're talking about. And then, as we watched on Discord some movies, and I'll bring those back very soon. I have a plan already. I owe a Lithuanian movie to our Discord regular Hartmanas. I'm gonna show people Redirected, which is a fun comedy, which is made by basically Guy Ritchie working together with Lithuanians, and Jason Statham is in that movie. So it's gonna be fun. But we watched Peculiarities of the National Hunt. But now Rybar and two majors, two huge pro-war channels, write about the peculiarities of beach recreation in Crimea in this season, which is just amazing. Quote, "In Crimea, over the past couple of years, it has become the norm when tourist vacation spots are adjacent to air defense positions and military airfields. Decisions on different departments of the federal center often contradict each other in terms of ensuring security and increasing domestic tourism. And here, he shows photos in the post, are the photos of pot-bellied men on the background of S-400s or worse, which are like anti-air systems. But the situation at the military airfield at Novofyodorovka in Crimea is at the height of schizophrenia. Again, I only figured out how to pronounce that word after I literally did the Google thing, because I always pronounce this but it's schizophrenia. Okay, sorry about that one. The beach itself is one of the favorite places for tourists and Crimeans, but the neighborhood with the military airfield causes perverted activities. The passage to one of the campsites goes through the territory of the airfield. It is unnecessary to comment on the situation. What concrete shelters and secrecy? That's what the two majors write. And finally, The author of the channel, Philologist in Ambush, suggests looking at Kartopolov's law, the gadget one, from the other side. What if the deputies are not degenerates, but carry out in their own way a completely logical instruction of the Ministry of Defense? The guy's logic looks as follows. There is no movement at the front, no clear strategy, and the Defense Ministry is fighting on the principle, let's throw in a meat assault and see if they advance. In such conditions, people are worn out and they must be replenished. But how? For 3 years, so many people have learned about the trench realities in Russia that even for very big money, there are not enough volunteers to die. So, Russia needs to cut off the flow of information from the front. And then Russia will be able to drive the naive and uninformed into the trenches. Quote, here comes the news about the attraction of unheard of generosity. Moscow Mayor Sergei Sobyanin signed a decree of a one-time payment of 1.9 million rubles. That's a lot of money. I think that's $19,000. The serviceman selected by the city's selection point for military service under contract. Taking into account all federal and metropolitan payments to a contract serviceman from Moscow, the total amount will be over 5.2 million rubles for the first year of service. As Comrade Zhizhov noted, on the one hand, it is great that the capital can afford such conditions of contracting in the Defense Ministry of the Russian Federation, but on the other hand, the question arises, why such a festival of generosity? The question, of course, is rhetorical, because the answer is obvious to everyone who is aware of the situation, because there is no volunteering at all. I mean, that is just stupid. And he continues, this festival of generosity is supported by a spirit-raising analyzation. This is not a typo. They like their anus very much, I suppose, from a patented military observer. The Russian army currently owns the initiative. It is that determines where it will advance, how it will advance, and where the fighting will develop. For a whole year of armed struggle, the Ukrainian armed forces have not achieved a single strategically significant result. They have had tactical successes, though. And this has a very strong impact on the moral and psychological state of the AFU personnel. At the same time, Mr. Kartopolov is peddling an odious bill in his augmentative efforts, stating with crocodile concern for security, and he quotes another response here, and ending with accusing those who disagree with this initiative as supporting drunkards, violators, AWOLs, and other lawless people. Don't ask how this relates to gadgets, because I don't know. While Mr. Sobolev calls for the creation of penal companies and penal battalions in order to strengthen order and discipline in the active army. Yes, I want to comment on this one. They had always had these penal groups, like Z assault units. The meat assault guys are in the penal battalions. And they also already have Zagrada Triady, like the guys who shoot the guys who retreat in the back, which is what the Chechen Kadyrovцы do, like the guys directly ordered by Kadyrov to do this. The so-called TikTok warriors. Again, total assholes, but, they do this stuff. And now they want to legitimize them, too, with this call for gadgets, which basically means that if you have a smartphone and you complain about anything, straight to the penal battalion you go, with people shooting you in the back if you don't really serve. So this would explain this whole quote to you. But carrying on with this, I assume that the root of the problem lies far from only in the servility of certain deputies and officials who dare not directly declare that the provisions of the said presidential decree are outdated. There are too many coincidences. Besides, I strongly suspect that the matter is not just a setup for Belousov, the current Ministry of Defense. The strategy of inflicting 1,000 cuts in the absence of tangible improvements in the organization of combat work and combat training of troops remains unchanged. According to the totality of circumstances, I believe that this is Gerasimov's interests, that these Duma and media servants who in their time were bribed by Shoigu and Salikov are now working. Measures are being pushed through designed to literally clamp down on the personnel of the active contingent and to limit the maximum extent possible of the spilling out of any negative information from the area of the special military operation, which naturally repels potential contract servicemen and excites the unequal part of the society, and in order to revive the dwindling influx of volunteers, weighty financial plushies are offered with weighty stories about the victorious march of our legions over the bones of the enemy ready to fall. A carrot and the stick, and an exceptionally clever execution. But today I want to finish something which I really address to, Alex from History Impossible, because he has a Chinese partner, and her father actually goes to China. And I really hope China takes notice of this, and so does the United States of America, because this is how Russia works, and this is why, once again, I am 100% sure that the Nord Stream 2 pipes and these whole pipe things was blown up by Russia themselves, because for one, we're looking at a purely evil solution to Russia's problems. See, the golden pen of Russia, war correspondent of Komsomolskaya Pravda, one of the largest communist, old-school communist newspapers, Dmitry Sheshchin, he literally proposed to organize a false flag terrorist attack on the Sila Sibiri, or Power of Siberia, gas pipeline to force China to stop supplying drones and components also to Ukraine. And commenting on this one, that'll only spoil it. Quote, "We are tackling the problem of enemy drones from the wrong sources. I'm about to write an unpleasant thing, and this will surprise many people. All the drones on the front, on both sides of it, are bought in the same place, China. All those motors, controllers, sensors, remotes, and blades are all from our dear partners. And I think it's a very dumb thing to try and buy more drones from China than Ukraine buys. All we need to do is to make China sell drones and components only to us. Since China, by definition, does not get into such subtleties and makes an incomprehensible face out of themselves, although it could have figured out by itself, we need to do some explanatory work with it." Here he presumes that the Chinese, evil as they are, oftentimes, might also be very stupid, which they're definitely not, because that's the typical Russian chauvinist thing to do. Quote, "If I were the Black Lord of the planet, I would do the following. In the Anglo-Saxon tradition," which is just amazing quotes again, "a drone made of Chinese components in a defined yellow-black coloring. I would put it into this power of Siberia, and I would tell China that it was its own fault and in general a bad and unreliable ally, which is pure truth ontologically speaking. Of course, there are more civilized ways to convince China, which is tightly clinging to the resource state of my motherland. But this is the quickest and most obvious. And believe me, China, if it wanted to, not a single motor, not a single blade would get to the Banderites, even through complex logistics. P.S. But the most correct method is to create completely their own drones and a mighty unified REB. I do not know how many years behind we are in this area. I dread to think." Well, that's good that you dread to think, you bastard. But yeah, if something happens to the Power of Siberia, we know now exactly, like to the point, whom to blame. But yeah, this will be it for today. I hope that I gave you some news. I will not be charging patrons for this episode because I've done that already for like my monthly limit has been reached. So this is free, and I'm just happy that I can make more episodes for you so that I can inform you, which is why I'm actually plugging those donations, because I feel kind of bad for charging patrons for whole episodes, which I don't want to do. So yeah, that's about it for today. До свидания, товарищи. And remember, happiness is mandatory.